Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Sully's Open Conversation, the show that aims to have an unfamiliar conversation in a familiar environment. Today I've taken the very short trip down the road to come and meet with Emily. Welcome Emily.
Hello.
I'm not sure actually how long we've known each other. It's been a little while, hasn't it?
It's confusing.
Yeah. But anyway, I'll let Emily introduce herself.
Nice one. Hi, my name's Em. I'm 25. I'm from Epsom. I'm a scientist working at GlaxoSmithKline. I work in cell and gene therapy, which is basically immunotherapies for cancer patients. So we use their cells to treat their cancers and target tumours, which is really cool area of research. Yeah, Epsom born and bred. We're in Epsom.
If you didn't know.
Yeah. I live at home with my parents, mum and dad, and JJ.
Woo!
Golden retriever.
We love dogs.
We do. Yeah, passions kind of traveling. I've done a bit of backpacking. I'm a bit of a nomad. Yeah. My next new dream is to get a van and go off traveling.
Travel, nice.
Yeah. So
anywhere particular? Europe.
Europe. Yeah. I think ski in the summer, surf in the winter. Ski in the summer.
Ski in the summer. Hold on.
Ski in the winter, surf in the summer.
Wow.
That's the new plan, and convert the van myself.
Amazing.
Or get someone to do it because I don't have the skills.
The DIY.
Yeah, the DIY is not up my street. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And the way we like to start the show is if you could name a positive experience that you have heard, seen, or done recently.
So I think a positive thing I've done recently is a bit of an obvious one. I've cut all my hair off.
Love it, by the way. Absolutely love it.
Thank you. I've kind
really
of taken some
you.
stuff. Look quite simple. Yeah, I just cut all my hair off. So that's quite a positive thing that I've done. I've wanted to do it for a while.
You kind of feel free, don't you?
Yeah, there's a lot of trauma attached to hair, apparently.
Yeah, so I can back that. I shaved my head in lockdown, which means which kind of says a lot. Yeah,
I haven't got buzz cut level just yet. But I might do. But yeah, it was kind of positive, reinforced by friends and family that just said I look so much happier and look a lot more like myself, which was really nice.
That's so lovely.
My sister said that with my long hair, I kind of even in photos, I'd be holding it up or literally looked like I wanted to tear it off. So
and now you have.
Yeah, it was good to get the razor out. Cathartic.
Very, very.
Yeah, so that's been a positive.
Lovely.
Positive that I've done
really
recently.
Lovely. So amazingly, you obviously reached out to me when I spoke about my experiences, and you sent me that post on your blog, which is just incredible.
Oh god, I sent everyone that blog. I'm plugging it.
I'm plugging it. Which is just incredible. But yeah, for the viewers and listeners that wouldn't really know you as you, kind of, would you mind explaining the experiences that you've been through? Yeah,
for sure. I think it's probably best to start way back from the start of that blog. So that was probably 6 years ago now. I was 18. I think is that how old you are when you go to uni?
Start uni, yeah, 18.
Yeah, so I went to Bath University to study sport and exercise science. Got the grades that I needed to. I worked really hard to get the grades to get in, and I was really excited for it. Thought I'd take to it like a duck to water kind of thing. And what actually happened was furthest away from that possible, really. I was treated for anxiety and depression within the first week of arriving.
Wow.
So my freshers experience wasn't quite the same as everyone else's experiences have been, but yeah, it was tough. I think I spent more time in doctor's appointments than I did at the students' union. But it was a big shock to me because I really it's hard to say, but I think I was so naive and arrogant.
Do you think that
before.
Was that on setting because of being away from home, do you think?
Yeah, or? So the main trigger for it was the whole change situation. I've never really liked change. I think I always knew that. Even changing teachers at school, that would be a trigger for me.
Really?
But it wouldn't be I'd be so within my comfort zone.
Of course.
That it didn't spiral into anything crazy. Until I was literally completely pushed out of my comfort zone and gone straight to uni, and everything changed. There wasn't one aspect, I don't think, of my life, apart from maybe a couple of friends that I knew, that stayed the same. that's how it felt at the time. So I think it just kind of spiraled into a lack of control, which was anxiety, which then led to like a depressive episode, which was really tough. And I think I said that I was naive and arrogant towards mental health before, because I didn't think it would happen to me.
Without encounter, exactly.
I
And
think,
that's the exact same approach that
Yeah.
I had. It might be happening to other people, but if
Yeah.
it's not happening to me,
It's
then
not
it's
my
not on my
problem.
radar. Yeah,
and
yeah.
you don't think it. You kind of think of yourself a bit invincible, and you're like, well, that's never going to happen to me. And I think that's why I was so taken aback by it, and why it was such a big knock, because I was like, I actually have no idea what's going on. Like, I didn't know what the feelings were. I was like, just completely baffled by it.
It's total
really.
confusion, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Total
I
confusion.
genuinely thought I was coming down with like a cold, so I was like dosing up on Lemsip, which obviously didn't work. Lemsip cures a lot, but not that.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But I just dosed up on Lemsip, and but luckily I had quite a few good friends that came to uni with me, and they kind of saw that I wasn't right. I guess the main symptoms and the triggers at the start were probably just becoming really isolated. Like, I was really isolated, and like little uni rooms, you can get so isolated in them.
What was your flat like as well? Were you friends with the people in your flat?
They were really nice, but
Being
it's
in
just so overwhelming.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
just a
yeah.
completely different situation, and then I had a very good group of friends at home that I was very comfortable with, and again, a massive change to another flat that I hardly even know at all. So it was tough, and I was very isolated. I think I didn't eat properly, I didn't sleep properly. I think my logic went completely
And
out
that
the
just
window.
skews you off as well, doesn't it?
The
I mean,
whole thing.
that's all going on in your mind, and then and then
Yeah.
it starts to affect your physical side and your day-to-day life,
Exactly.
and then you just
And
deteriorate
just spiral
more.
and spiral
Yeah.
and spiral. Exactly what happened, and that's why it went downhill so quickly, because I think I just wasn't functioning. And then there was other parts of it that was kind of, I just completely lost myself. Like, I just didn't.
You don't feel like yourself, do you?
Didn't know who I was. Like,
Yeah.
My friend Aidan came round, who started with me at the same time. He came round to my flat like most evenings to check on me, because he knew something wasn't right. And
We need those people.
we need those people.
We need those
He's
people.
a good egg. And he would come into my flat every night, and there'd be like pictures up. When you're in uni, you put your pictures up from home. And he'd be looking at the pictures, he'd be like, Emily, you look so happy in all of these. Like, you are a happy person. Like, I'm telling you, you are. And I just didn't believe him. I was like, it's not true, Aidan. Like, I'm just not a happy person. I'm not okay. And it was just that lack of self-confidence. It just completely
And you go
shattered.
really pessimistic, doesn't it?
So
It's
pessimistic.
just,
I was just completely shattered. And if it wasn't for people like Aidan, and there was another girl called Lily from football who was started with me at the same time, if it wasn't for them and them reaching out to my family and saying she's not right, it really scares me to think it could have gone another way. And I'm in like
complete grateful and
complete
debt.
debt
Yeah.
to those two, and the rest of my family and friends who gave me so much support throughout the whole thing. So yeah, just spiraled really quickly. It's a blur, but I think it was like 3 weeks in total that I was at uni.
Wow, really? And then came home.
Came home straight away. Luckily, didn't have to pay the £9,000. That was good.
Dodge that bullet.
Yeah, I'm begging, like, please, I swear I only went to one lecture. And
We can laugh about it now.
It wasn't fun at the time.
Yeah.
And then I actually didn't. So my parents came up when my friends called them and said I wasn't okay. And they knew something wasn't right, but they didn't want to take me out. They wanted me to make the decision, and it is a big decision to drop out of uni, and they wanted that to be on my terms. So they've said since that they kind of regretted it, because they left that night and they said, we just wanted to take you home, but because they were so worried about me,
they don't want to put that on you.
Yeah, they knew, and also they knew that I wasn't right. They were like, you weren't there, like behind the eyes, I wasn't there, and they didn't want to leave me, and they said it was so hard, but yeah, I had to make the decision myself, and I agree with them for doing that, and I'm glad that they did do that. And then literally the next morning, I woke up and couldn't think of any other reason to get out of bed other than to go home. So this is what I mean by no logic. I literally went out with my phone. That was it. Left all my stuff in the flat and went straight to town, got on a train.
Straight home.
Straight to London.
Wow.
Straight to London, and turned up at Sutton Station, rang my mum. I was like, hi, can you pick me up? And she was like, I think she was relieved.
Yeah,
I think she was like, thank God you made that decision, because I think they would have been so worried if I'd have stayed there. They were so worried anyway, and they just wanted me to make the call. And then, yeah, started Road to Recovery from there.
Road to Recovery, is that therapy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, it's GPs and therapy and
Of
stuff.
course,
but
yeah, it's a lengthy process.
It's such a lengthy process, and that was why it was so hard to recover in Bath, because it was so hard to get the help.
And in a uni environment as well, it's just like,
Yeah.
it's so intense, and there's just so much going on, and especially with students away from home. I mean, I think I was in my final year that I actually wasn't even signed up to my GP when everything started to go wrong.
Yeah.
So like that causes even more problems,
Even more stress.
and even more stress. Like
Yeah.
it can make you deteriorate further as well.
Exactly. So I couldn't recover in that environment.
Yeah.
But luckily, when I got home, I had my GP, and I got therapy through my mum's health insurance from her work. It was, yeah, a tenuous link, but I was
A link well needed.
Yeah, exactly. And I went to get therapy from a lady in Sutton, and she was honestly brilliant. And it took me a while to click with a therapist, actually, and I think it does take a while, but I clicked with her straight away. And I think that was the first point that I fully accepted that I had anxiety and that I was going through a depressive episode. I think a professional saying it to you and validating your feelings and saying, like, this is an actual thing, I think that was the only time that I accepted it. And before that, I didn't want to accept it, because I felt really weak. I felt ashamed. I felt embarrassed. I didn't speak to any of my friends. I had to tell them one by one what had happened, because I was so embarrassed.
Really?
And that's why these conversations are so important.
Exactly.
And what you're doing is so important, because there's nothing to be ashamed of.
There's not at all.
There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's as common as a cold.
Yeah,
literally as common as a cold, and there should be no stigma around it.
I think that comes with the illness as well. 100% is that I'm the problem. Like it's me. Like there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Why is no one else around me feeling this type of way?
Whereas a lot of people are.
Yeah. Well, they are. They just don't. Or talk about it.
Exactly.
And it's interesting you say about you then started to accept it when the therapist, who is a medical professional, was starting to explain and because it's amazing having your friends and family around you, because they can provide that emotional support, but it's so important to have that medical professional insight that is totally kind of
unbiased.
Unbiased.
Yeah, and that was the main turning point for me, and that was the point where I started to recover properly, and accepting the help was the main thing. Probably took me about 5 months or so to recover, and I found myself in an impromptu gap year. I was in a gap year now, and I'd obviously dropped out, wasn't going back, and then I found my apprenticeship with GSK, which was landed on my feet with it, to be honest, and it's a lot of credit to my old school. I went back to my old school after I dropped out, and a careers advisor there, Mr. Gledhill, helped me with finding an alternative route to university, because I knew it wasn't for me, and like an apprenticeship is so much better suited to me as a person. Like I like the routine. I could come home on the weekends. Like it was in Hertfordshire, but I came back home.
So that's like northwest London,
too far.
kind of.
It wasn't Bath.
Yeah, it wasn't Bath. Yeah.
So, it was. That's what I kind of did, and then ended up on my feet, kind of thing, really.
And interestingly, a lot of people have said with me, especially with depression, routine is really key.
That's a massive thing, yeah.
Really key. It's like, again, it is kind of holding yourself accountable to do things. Certainly in my experiences, obviously, when I was in my darkest places, I couldn't even hold routine. Like you just you can't function.
There's no way. Yeah.
Like you not going to lectures. Like there's no way.
Time just goes out the window.
It's physically incapable. Like physically incapable. It's not just a mental block where you're just like not holding yourself. You cannot do it. Because that is the illness in the mind. That is how it presents itself.
It's such a clever thing.
It really is, and our brain is so powerful. Like there's no wonder that it can cause things like that.
Yep.
And we don't even notice it's happening.
Yeah, literally. Literally, it's the most powerful thing. And I think when I was saying earlier how I felt weak for admitting it, that I think the ironic thing is people that go through mental health struggles are probably the strongest. because it is so hard to tackle your own mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard.
Even just saying that, tackling your own mind is just like, how? Like, how do you even approach that?
Which is why I think therapy was such a great thing for me, because they're trained in teaching you how to unwire those kind of thoughts, and that's what I kind of worked through with her. But the main thing about that therapy session when I came back from Bath, or sessions, was to figure out the reason why, because I had no idea why the anxiety happened. So yeah, what was the root cause? And it was because of the change, and I don't like change, and the lack of control that comes with that. And
lack of control, yeah, especially with anxiety. In the episode that I released just this week, it was with Natalia, and she was talking about anxiety, and there is a lot of with anxiety, it's the loss of control, or the perception that you have lost control, and then you're like, what if this is going to happen, or what if that can happen? It's the what ifs.
That's what anxiety is. I think my therapist says it is like, it's the what ifs in the future, and then depression's more like, what could it or should have.
So it's anxiety is the
Clearly
future, depression's
it's
working though. Anxiety is the future, worrying about what might happen, and then depression is living in the past. And and the kind of traumas that you've been through and things like that.
So yeah, that was that, and then I started at GSK and didn't really actually have a major episode or a breakdown for 5 years or so.
Amazing.
Which was really good. Obviously there's peaks and troughs, and I probably had a few blips here and there, but I think because I knew what the trigger was, I knew it was change.
And you knew mechanisms and ways of combating it.
Well, I actually think I forgot them. But I knew the reasons, so then I'd kind of try and prevent it, and like I would know to go easy on myself if there was a big change happening, or give myself more time.
That's also
and
a massive
like
thing.
Like a preventative.
Yeah, a massive thing is going easy on yourself, because especially in our society, we've got this like work hard culture where you've got to grind, and
especially if you're a perfectionist.
It's just like this grind culture where are we allowed to be compassionate with ourselves and just say, do you know what, I need the day off.
Yeah.
This is becoming too much. This is I'm not myself anymore. I need to kind of step back
and it's
just...
what you'd say to a friend, right?
Yeah.
And
why do you
never say it to yourself?
Exactly.
My therapist always says that. It's easier said than done.
It is very easier said than done.
It's a thing that should be I think should just be treated as any other illness. And like, if I had the flu and I had a head cold, I wouldn't be able to work. Like, and the same thing if I have a mental health problem and I have an anxiety, like a bout of anxiety, whatever, I shouldn't be expected to work. And luckily, the next breakdown, my work were very good about
their understanding, were they?
Yeah. So there was no episodes for like 5 years. And then about 6 months ago, again, I think it always happens like every 5 years. Just having like a 5 year.
The 5 year time, yeah.
I went through a lot of changes in my life. One major one being the breakdown of my relationship with my previous boyfriend that was of about 4 years.
That's a long time.
It was a long time, and it was a really hard decision. It was a decision that I made to end the relationship because I felt I hadn't properly explored my sexuality.
Which is very brave, actually.
It was a really
and
hard
really
thing
massive credits to you, because so a lot of us feel comfortable in a relationship and then we may not totally feel ourselves, but stay in there, like, again, because it's a comfort zone, because it's secure.
Yeah.
So to make that decision is admirable.
So it was
must be really
one of
difficult.
I think it was harder than dropping out of Bath.
Really?
To be honest, that was an easy decision. That was like, that's fine, I can go. I know that I'll be better at home. But this decision was the unknown kind of thing. Like, I'm making the decision based on my gut, but I don't know if I do need to explore it. I don't know. I just have a feeling. It was the what if feeling that kind of never went away. Yeah, and credit to the ex-boyfriend. He was honestly the most supportive guy throughout the whole thing. He actually was the one that helped me through the conversations and helped me make the decision. And that's just a testament to how much of a great guy he is, and also made it so much harder.
So much harder, yeah.
Oh, you're such a nice guy.
That's amazing.
Nothing but love for him, but.
You do I've seen it in society, and I'm lucky to not have experienced it. But there are relationships where someone gets left because of someone else's
Right.
changing sexuality, and then
Further
they
down the
get
line.
bantered and things
Yeah.
like that. Like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah,
you've just,
that's not good.
it's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
for him to be so incredibly understanding and
It's just him as a person.
Yeah.
He's just such a nice person, and I think it could have gone later down the line. I could have stayed and then always regretted it, and then we'd have maybe been married and had kids, and then that would have been an even more complicated situation.
Yeah.
So I think my instincts just took over, and I made that decision, and that was a big change, and not just to my relationship status, but also my sexuality, and becoming more open with that, and
accepting
obviously
it and
accepting it,
processing it.
I mean, I was accepting of throughout the relationship. It was known that I was bisexual, and
Right.
Chapman was okay with that.
You go,
Name and shame. Thanks, Chapman. And yeah, it was a known thing before, so it wasn't like I was coming out. But when people asked me like, what was the breakup for, it was then came along with the fact that I had to do this because of my sexuality, and that was hard, and that was
incredibly
a big change.
brave. Incredibly brave.
Change. But yeah, that was one of the big changes that happened, and then that also resulted in me moving out of my house in Hertfordshire and moving back here. My apprenticeship was coming to an end, so there was a lot of changes happening, and should have been a major warning sign. But I think for about a month I was probably in a high functioning anxiety stage, and I was, looking back on it now, it was definitely high functioning anxiety. I was just ticking off things to do, and I was just like, okay, let's do this, and this, and then it'll be okay.
Because you're kind of convincing yourself that no, I can operate.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, isn't it?
It was 100%.
You're trying to block it out really and
much.
mask it.
Yeah.
Masking the emotions and masking what we're actually feeling is, unfortunately, especially when you're a very personable person, so am I. It makes it easier for us to just mask over it, hide it, and that's the scary thing, because then
rather
when
than
we
sitting
do
down
and just being like, look,
even with myself, and sitting down with myself and being like, okay, have you actually processed it?
Yeah.
And I don't think I processed it for about a month, and that's why it then led to a breakdown about a month after the breakup. It was actually the day of his brother's wedding, which I was meant to be at, and I think that was another trigger. Because it was kind of finalised, and I just spiralled so quickly, and luckily I was with the girls at the time. We were hungover, which probably doesn't help.
Doesn't help the anxiety at all, like I said earlier.
But I think it was definitely coming. There was high functioning anxiety for a month before that, and I knew straight away something wasn't right, and I knew the feelings from birth, so I was like, I know exactly what that is.
It's almost triggering, is it?
Yeah, it was because I was then stressing about getting into that point again, and it was just like a spiral. It was like a cycle. It's a vicious cycle, and then I just said to them, like, I'm not right, I'm not okay, I need to like go somewhere, but I didn't know where to go at that point. Like
you don't feel okay in your own body, kind of thing.
I was like, I'm not safe. Like, I wasn't safe at that point. I think it went really quickly into really, really low thoughts.
It can so rapidly deteriorate.
Really low, like really,
suicidal. Kind of.
It was more at that point. It was more the doubt in my mind about the decision I'd made, and I think it's important to touch on here that like it's really hard for people of the LGBTQ plus community that you're like conflicting with yourself
100
all the time.
I still call myself out for internalized homophobia because of growing up, because of the school, because of growing up in an all boys school where it was actually a sin to be gay. You'd get bullied for it. In many countries. I mean, you've got Qatar World Cup going. We won't get into that.
Don't get into that.
But it's strange, isn't it? It's, you question yourself, which again can be so incredibly tiring on top of the anxiety and depression.
You just don't want to do it. And that's what the position I was in. I said to Aoife, I was like, I just don't want to go through the pain of it. I was like, I can't do it. I'm not strong enough. I'm not strong enough to go through with this decision. I'm not strong enough to be who I am. Like I was like, I'm genuinely can't do it. And then she was like, don't say that. She was like, don't say that, you can do it. And I'll promise you'll be able to do it. And then she drove me to my auntie's house. All the girls drove me to my auntie's, dropped me off. And then, road to recovery started again. I knew what to do this time. So I rang 111 straight away. And I accepted what it was. I was like, this is exactly the same. I accept it's anxiety. I accept it's depression. So I know exactly what I needed to do. And I think that was why I recovered so much quicker, because I just accepted it and accepted the help.
Yeah.
And I rang 111, got a GP appointment for like the Monday after, genuinely like the next day or the day after that, 9 a.m. Went into the GP, completely broke down, and he was like, well, okay. He was like, you've gone through some shit. And I was like,
yeah, duh.
Thanks. He was hilarious. Just made me laugh. But yeah, he signed me off work actually for 3 weeks. Straight away, he was like, you need time, you need space, and prescribed me antidepressants, which I've been on for 6 months now, sertraline.
Same as me.
It's a lifesaver.
Yeah, it allows, it certainly, and I say it a lot, is it allows you to operate from day to day.
Yeah.
It's not a long-term solution. And hopefully you can get to a point, where you can wean yourself off them, and
for sure.
But in terms of being able to operate on a day-to-day basis, they are a lifesaver,
so
like
good.
you say.
I think my emotions before taking them were either very, very high or very, very low. There was no in between. Whereas now that I'm on them, I think I'm just completely leveled out, and that's what I always say to people when they ask me how it is. And that's been so helpful with recent times at the moment. There's been a lot going on with my family. My dad's being treated for cancer at the moment. So that's okay. Thanks. But there's a lot going on, and having that to fall back on, and also I've had therapy as well. I went back to my therapist that I had after Bath, which was also a godsend.
And that's also an amazing thing, because you don't have to explain your entire story again,
which can be so draining.
Rehashing it. It can get quite tiring just doing that, but to actually have the opportunity to go back to someone that knows your story, knows you,
it was so
have
comforting.
had that relationship with.
And she knew the triggers. Like, I didn't have to explain it. I think I said what happened, and she was like, makes sense. And I was like, yeah. And then my therapy sessions this time have been more working on how to cope with the anxiety, and actually working through modules and working out what I can do to sort of cope with it day to day, and learn strategies to get better. And also we touched on the perfectionism thing, because
it can't be perfect, unfortunately.
No,
and it's
so
difficult to let go.
Learning that slowly.
It's a process, isn't it?
For sure. And yeah, it's been good. I think for the last 6 months I've been feeling a lot better, and I recovered so much quicker than I did in Bath. Like, all my friends were saying how surprised they were that I was already like back out within a month. They were like, what? Like, you sure you want to come out?
What are you doing here?
They were like, go back home.
We didn't expect to see you for at least 3 months. We were kind of enjoying your time.
You wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, it was really. Also, there's such a great support system. Jokes aside, like, they were on Emily Watch after that day. It was genuine Emily Watch. I wasn't allowed to be left on my own, and they'd be like, there'd be someone different round every day, and family as well. Their support is second to none. Like, honestly, and I'm fortunate enough to have that kind of support, but some people aren't as lucky.
Of course, yeah. And
I don't know how those people. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. I'm exactly in the same boat. We're incredibly fortunate to have a network of family and friends that can be there as soon as you call on them.
For sure. Literally drop everything and they'll be there.
And they may not know how important that is, but I don't know, I'm sometimes quite awful at expressing how important they are, and how they do it and what they do.
Yeah.
But you just can't really put it into words, can you?
Big shout out.
Yeah, massive shout out.
This is us putting it into words. I don't have to do it again. But
So you've been back to the therapist.
Yeah.
You're still there?
Still there, still with her. It's just helpful at the moment with everything going on at home with family and stuff to stay level. Yeah. And it's really nice to have that to fall back on. Like, I know I've got therapy lined up for a certain day, and I'm like, okay, I can actually just
unleash.
Yeah, I can let it go all there. Sometimes I don't need to let it go, but it's nice to have it there just in case I do.
Yeah. Because actually sometimes we don't realise we're locking things up and keeping it built in, and obviously then it starts to manifest and fester sometimes. Yeah.
And it just takes someone asking that question, and you're like, oh, actually,
and that can lead to a breakdown because if it is built up, and that's exactly why I think I'm going back to therapy. Yeah. Is because I do feel like I'm sort of kidding myself. I can go from scenarios where I'm like, do you know what? I reckon I'm in the best place possible, and then 2 days later it's like,
it's just an ups and ebbs and flows.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. And that, of course, is part of the borderline personality diagnosis, is that I don't necessarily have like really intense, short-lasting relationships, which can be a very kind of, I don't want to say popular symptom, it's a common symptom.
Yeah.
But the mood swings
Yeah.
are definitely very frequent, and which is strange because, like I say with sertraline, we're obviously both saying and sat here that it's worked very well for us, or certainly to an extent, but some people it might not.
Sometimes it doesn't, and that it's
the
not a one
uniqueness.
size fits all.
Exactly.
The treatment of mental
like an
health is
antibiotic
not,
might fit everyone. However,
speaking my language here.
Yeah. Getting that biology thrown in there.
Right up my street.
But yeah, our minds and brains are so unique that you can't just throw, like you say, a one size fits all thing over it, blanket over it.
And that's why you have to work on what works for you.
For you.
And find that out, and it can be hard. I remember I didn't take antidepressants the first time. I didn't want to. I was there like, I don't want to take them. Probably because I didn't accept that I had anxiety and depression. But
I was very similar. Before I went into hospital last year, I was literally like, I'm not taking medication.
Yeah.
If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it myself because I'm strong enough, that kind of thing. And then that was obviously at the point where I hadn't accepted that I was ill. I was not in that kind of headspace at all. I was literally like, well, I'm just going there because actually I think I'm a threat to myself.
Yeah.
Like I'm not okay to be out in society.
It's brave of you to say also.
Yeah, it's like if I hadn't, I look back on certainly the reason why I was then captured by our health service was because I'd broken my knuckle out from an outburst. So the agitation and anger and you experience when you're in that dark place, which obviously isn't me at all, really. I thought I'd broken my knuckles. Then, like 2 days later, I was actually sat in the A&E room thinking, like, if they let me out of here, I'm definitely going to go and self-harm and do something stupid, 100%. So then it was exactly like you say, when I sat down and they asked me how I did it, someone said, what's going on? Yeah. And that's the direct question that I needed. That was literally the question I needed, and I just broke down.
Yeah.
That was it.
It's what you needed though.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the conversations that I've had is that people say that, or that stigma and prejudice saying self-harming and things like that is attention seeking. It's attention needing.
Yeah, that's good.
It's a total flip, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's literally like that person isn't seeking attention. They need it. They need it because they're not doing that just out of that no one would do that unless they were going through a scenario that they couldn't understand in their own mind.
And I think that goes back to the naivety and arrogance towards mental health. And someone saying attention seeking, that sounds arrogant to me. And I think these conversations are what's so important to break down those stigmas and to have compassion for people that are going through it. Like, have compassion.
Compassion is that word.
It doesn't have to be empathy. You don't have to
understand. No, you don't have to understand.
You can try to understand, but I don't think anyone does understand it until they physically go through it.
And you don't want anyone to do that.
But it's compassion that you need, and just a shoulder to hold you up kind of thing. Yeah. It's
and you get different exposures in society, I suppose, because some people, because there is such a lack of conversation, people think they're saying or doing the right thing, but could actually be doing the complete opposite.
Yeah.
So the more I kind of work in mental health and mental illness, I did an online course for like 3 months, and it was basically saying that the history of mental illness is that 1960s, if you had depression, if you had schizophrenia, if you had anything, you'd be put in a hospital in the middle of the country, surrounded by fields and nothingness, and just thrown. And that's why it wasn't recognised in society. That's why no one. That's why we have a culture of. It's not that long ago. It's really not that long ago. Wow. It changed to community care by like the 80s. I want to say 90s. It's really. That's why we still say it's on the radar, but there's still a long way to go.
So much work to do.
There's still a long way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, these conversations obviously.
Or what make it happen?
What make it happen? That is absolutely fabulous. you blown me away, to be fair. It's actually been amazing. It's really cool.
Oh, well, I'm glad. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm a massive fan of the podcast, for sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Before we finish, if there is one particular mindful technique that you know worked for you, what would that be?
I think my main tip with mental health, I think, is, I've touched on it multiple times, I think, throughout the conversation, but is accepting that you have a problem and not to be ashamed of it, and don't feel weak at all. It really does not make you weak, and to accept the help. I think that's the main thing that I want to portray about mental health, and getting that across. There's no shame in taking help for mental health at all, and the help with therapy, and it doesn't have to be therapy or medication like I've been on. It can just be talking to friends or doing mindfulness and doing techniques like that, or just going out on a walk and having some time for yourself. Like, whatever it is, don't be ashamed to do it.
Yeah.
It's not really a mindful technique.
Well, I think in a way, I think it is, because of course it is difficult to accept that something is wrong, because you think it's you and you're the problem and no one can help and that sort of thing. Exactly. But actually, acceptance is the first step to help and getting better, really. Sure. If you're constantly in denial, that is putting a blockade on you accessing or asking for help or saying that you need it, really.
I think one of the main, what's the word, when it's a situation and you compare it to something else. Oh, I don't know what the word is.
I can't think of it.
Anyway, I think the one of my things that my mum said when I was having the breakdown in Bath, she always referred to it as, if you had a broken leg, you wouldn't reject having a crutch, or you wouldn't reject having a cast for it, or you wouldn't feel ashamed for wearing a cast if you had a broken leg. It would be stupid if you did.
Would be. It'd just get worse.
It'd just get worse. It wouldn't heal. And it's the same with mental health. If you don't accept the help and you don't accept everything that's out there, it's going to take you so much longer to heal.
And that can obviously deteriorate further as well, of course.
Exactly. And that's probably one of my best tips that is always stuck in my mind with mental health.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, amazing. Honestly, really is. Thank you everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time on Sully's Open Conversation. Thank you and goodbye.
See you later.